The Inheritance of Fragments. It was Easter, April 1990. I had just been poured back from school into the familiar rhythm of the house. Cassava to peel, gari to press, hands working while the mind wandered somewhere else entirely. Nothing announced itself as extraordinary. The holiday smelled like all the others before it. Warm earth, palm oil, the particular kind of sameness that makes you believe tomorrow will resemble today. But I kept returning, without understanding why, to my mother's visit a few weeks earlier, the way she had looked at me. Not her usual looking, which was always watchful, always measuring for safety. This was something else. Her eyes held a thing she chose not to release into words. She folded it up, she swallowed it. Her smile stayed after she left. The way a lamp's glow lingers on a wall long after the flame has been covered. A few days later, my uncle came. He said it the way men say things they have already decided not to explain. "We are going to the village." Voice low, almost too steady. I did not ask why. There are adults in an African household whose tone alone shuts every door of inquiry. I followed him, carrying the quiet assumption that I was being taken to see her, that the ache I had been holding without naming was about to be answered. I did not know that grief had already beaten us to the destination. The journey moved like a procession that had not yet announced its purpose. The air pressed against the windows of the vehicle and refused to lift inside me. A numbness was spreading, slow and quiet. I mistook it for peace. That is the most dangerous form of silence, the kind the body generates when it already knows what the mind would refuse to accept. When we arrived, they told me she was gone, buried 3 days ago. In my maternal village, the dead are not kept waiting. We do not suspend them between worlds in the cold storage of a mortuary dressed for ceremonies they can no longer attend. We return them to the earth quickly within 3 days, so the soul may depart without delay. It is not a small mercy. It is a form of tenderness I only understood much later. They took me to the grave. It lay beside the house she had nearly finished building. It was her final project, her last argument against impermanence. The earth above her was still fresh, still breathing, almost. I stood at its edge, my feet on the ground, my spirit hovering somewhere above the scene, not yet prepared to descend into what was being asked of me. Half child, half orphan, half of everything I had been before I arrived. 2 weeks before this, she had come to me at Mary Knoll College. She was radiant the way mothers are radiant when they have fought hard to give their children something worth fighting for. She told me to keep studying, that she was proud. Her smile arrived on my face like light through a window I had not known was open. I smiled back, certain there would be more such moments. There is a particular cruelty in the ordinary last time. The last conversation you do not know is final. The last embrace that does not hold long enough because you believe another is coming. Death does not send notice. It does not arrive in storm. It comes dressed in the clothes of an unremarkable afternoon, and when it leaves, it takes everything and leaves behind only the silence where the person used to stand. Now all I have of her is the memory of that visit, the way her eyes did not finish what they were saying. My story begins with a burial, a mound of brown earth, a silence so loud it swallowed me whole. But my mother's soul did not go quietly into that ground. She left behind pieces, fragments of longing and love that could not complete its journey of dreams, interrupted mid-sentence of a self that never arrived at the rest. It was always reaching toward, like shards of a broken mirror. They each hold a partial reflection. The desire for love untainted by tribe, the yearning for a marriage witnessed openly before heaven, the ache of rejection that settled into her bones and was never fully dissolved. I did not choose this inheritance. No one chooses what is pressed into their hands at birth. Nevertheless, I carry it the way a son carries a father's name, even in the father's absence. Not always with understanding, but with the weight of it present in every room he enters. This book is my reckoning with those fragments, a descent into my mother's soul. Through the scars she bore without a name for them, through the choices she made under pressures she could not always see. through the invisible wounds that traveled from her life into mine without announcement. Her story was not only a story of loss, it was a cry, a long cry that is still echoing. She was a woman who wanted to live whole. She dreamed of belonging, of a love that did not require her to diminish herself before it would stay, of a name she could carry without shame, of a marriage witnessed by heaven and earth together in the open. She was a woman who wanted to live whole. She dreamed of belonging, of a love that did not require her to diminish herself before it would stay, of a name she could carry without shame, of a marriage witnessed by heaven and earth together in the open light of day. But tradition sat on her shoulders, the way stone sits on soft ground, gradually, silently, until the ground no longer remembers its original shape. She was given to a husband before she had become a woman. She buried a child before she had finished grieving her own girlhood. She loved a man whose people refused to receive her, and she longed for the altar, for the covenant, for the white dress. Sadly, death arrived before any of it could. Some deaths are not only of the body. My mother died with chambers of her soul, still sealed, still bruised, still mid-sentence. Her death was not an ending, it was a handing over. I now hold the fragments. To live is to inherit the unfinished business of those who came before us. Some inherit land, some inherit names, some inherit grief so old it has forgotten its own origin. I inherited love and sorrow in the same cupped hands, warmth and wound, presence and absence. A mother who was fierce and fragile, cherished and discarded, both here and already halfway gone. To honor her requires more than memory. Memory alone is a sealed room. Honoring her means opening the door, entering the darkness, lighting something and beginning the slow and deliberate work of healing. This is not only her story, it is mine. And if you are reading these pages with something unresolved pressing against the inside of your chest, then it may well be yours too. For those of us born into families where blessing and bloodline burden arrive together, where we grew up loving people who were themselves in the middle of their own unfinished healing, this is our sacred work, to trace the fragments, to name them honestly, to lift them toward Elohim, and to begin the long, grace-filled, sometimes painful journey toward wholeness. Let the healing begin. Reflection and soul work. Think back to the last time you saw a loved one who is no longer here. What details have stayed with you? The particular look in their eyes, the way they said your name, the last ordinary thing you shared together. Where do you feel the weight of what they left unfinished? In which part of your own life do their fragments still move?